Well, Cole Anthony said it best. The Magic laid an egg, a humongous egg. So let's break it down, try and learn something, try and get over it. The Magic lost again on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is March 11th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic again lay an egg in a marquee playoff-type matchup, leaving us lots of questions of their readiness for the playoffs. We will talk about what happened in the Magic's loss in the Indiana Pacers and what needs to change as the Magic get ready for the real deal in about a month. We're getting there, folks. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Let's start here. I don't think any of us were crazy to put pressure on these last two games. Friday's game against New York Knicks. Check out our last episode to hear the recap of that game. Or Sunday's game against the Indiana Pacers. These are big games. They are against teams that the Magic are fighting for in the playoff chase. They remain a half game behind the Knicks after the Knicks lost to the Sixers, which listen to Locked On Knicks for that. They are a game and a half, or they're now a game up on the Pacers, sitting in fifth. It's very tight in the standings. They're only a half game up on Philadelphia for sixth, and now I believe game and a half up on Miami for eighth. It is very tight. All of these games matter, and these games against your direct competition matter that much more. Now, granted, the Magic still own the tiebreaker with the Knicks. They still own the tiebreaker with the Pacers. If there's a three-way tie, division winner is the first tiebreaker, and as long as the Magic aren't tied with Miami, they win that too. So the Magic still have a lot working in their favor, and the first thing we need to emphasize is just because the Magic lost these two games does not mean the season is over. But it is also fair and also accurate, in my opinion, to say these games meant a little bit more. Because the Magic over the last several weeks have been feasting on bad teams. And that's fine. Everyone's got to play the bad teams. You got to take care of your business against the bad teams. And the Magic have done that. They'll get the chance to do that again Wednesday against a Brooklyn team that has had their number and played really well tonight against Cleveland. You got to take care of your business. The Magic have done that. But you also got to prove yourself against quality competition. You've also got to prove yourself against the teams you will have to beat in the playoffs. And we could talk about the schedule being a little rough for the Magic lately, and there's something to that, and even the Magic would admit that. You could talk about the injuries that the Magic have, being without Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs were huge factors in this game. But the fact of the matter is, in these two playoff-type games, a raucous crowd at Madison Square Garden, which everyone on the roster admitted felt like a playoff game, was great playoff practice, or great to get a sense of what the playoffs will feel like. At the Kia Center on Sunday, the Magic again had the third largest attendance in franchise history. That crowd was ready to cheer that team on, and they gave them nothing. In both games, the Magic got outworked, outplayed, out-executed, and just plain beat. As Cole Anthony said after the game, the Magic laid an egg in both games. They did not play Magic basketball. And as he put it, it's not anything bad. It's not ill intentions. It's not bad intentions. That's almost worse, though, because the Magic didn't rise to the level that the game called for. That's the most concerning part of all of this. Look, the Magic had a 15-point lead. They looked like they were going to coast to a victory there. They still played good defense in this game. They played defense good enough to win. But at a certain point, what got them the lead stopped. When they were unable to hit shots from the outside, or shots from the inside for that matter, when they were unable to hit shots, they got into a hole. They stopped moving the ball. They stopped attacking. They settled. They tried to do too much on their own. Maybe being down several players like Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner felt like they needed to do more, and they forced it. Again, as Cole Anthony said after the game, it's not that anyone's trying to do the wrong thing here. But the fact of the matter is, against one of the worst defenses in the league, and Indiana, I thought, did play very good defense. Again, they're capable of playing very good defense. The Magic weren't able to muster anything. They just looked stuck in the mud. And just like Friday's game against the Knicks, when they scored only 78 points, they got 97 this time at least, but the Magic just really, really looked rough. They looked unable to A, make the critical shots they needed to get some momentum and stem the tide, but B, create the kind of shots that they know they need to make. And some of that falls on their stars, because they have the ball in their hands. They're the ones kind of leading the charge. Franz Wagner's 5 for 14. Paolo Banchero 6 for 20. 1 for 8 from 3. Just not good enough. Just not efficient enough. Not trusting their teammates enough. And some of that is there was really poor spacing, really bad organization that a real point guard would help with. To be perfectly honest, it's not that the Magic did anything that we're not surprised by anymore. Look. We know this team is going to struggle to score. We know this team will have bad shooting nights. 9 for 36 in this game. We know that that's going to happen with this group. There are flaws that they have to fix in the offseason. But as I tell people all the time, they can still win these games by outworking, by defending. The real tenets of Magic basketball is they will not get outworked, and they will defend you really well, even if the shots aren't falling. Their defense will pick up the offense. And those are the two things the Magic didn't have happen. Indiana did a good job leaking out off of the misses around the basket. Orlando was slow in transition. They were late on rotations. They were slapping. They were frustrated. The Magic did not live up to the moment. At the critical juncture of the game, the Magic did not stand by their principles. In the critical juncture of the game, the Magic let frustration win, for no better way to say it. They let frustration win. And that's not their formula for success. To me, less than the losses. Honestly, if they would have lost both of these games and they played well, harm, not good, but understandable. Okay, now we know we have these little things we need to tweak. They played poorly in both of these games. And they did not play Magic basketball. They let bad habits sink in when they got pushed with adversity. When they got tested with adversity. When they met a playoff game, they went to their worst habits. And that's the part that should be concerning. That when they got the playoff test, they did not pass it in any way. I mean, granted, look, the Magic's defense, they gave up 115 points per 100 possessions in the loss of the Knicks on Friday, gave up 98 points in that game. They ended up giving up only 111 to the Pacers and 112 defensive rating, 112 points per 100 possessions. Orlando played good enough defense to win this game. 112 is a tick above their average. They played well enough defensively to win this game, at least by the numbers. They fouled way too much. They turned the ball over. They didn't execute. So much of this game and so much of both of these games, credit to the other teams, credit to the Pacers, credit to the Knicks. They forced the Magic into these bad habits, but so much of it was the Magic making mistakes they can avoid. Mistakes they must avoid. Because neither of these games look like a team that was playoff ready, that was ready to compete for the postseason, ready to play these humongous games. And that's the most disappointing part. That's what has me angry. That's what should have you angry. It's not the result. The result is whatever. It's that in another big game, the Magic didn't step up to the plate. They didn't rise to the occasion. They shriveled. And this team's responded well. They've shown some maturity, but this was an immature game. And, I asked Rick Carlisle about this, about dealing with a young team going through a playoff chase for the first time. And, Rick, I thought, had a really good thought was, you can only excuse youth so much. This is a young team. They're going through it. But they know they can be better. And they got away with this against Utah. They got away with this against Washington. They got away with this against Detroit. They got away with this against Charlotte. They've been getting away with this for a week. And when they finally play teams that are going to punish them for it, they got burned. So what needs to change for the Orlando Magic? We're going to go through the box score first, and then we'll talk about how the Magic can get themselves playoff ready. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver who likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. With class exclusive Google built in, you're always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8, expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, as well as now on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Okay, let's go through the final box scores. The Orlando Magic fall to the Indiana Pacers 111-97. Again, just a really disappointing offensive effort. Again, the Knicks game, the Knicks played some really good defense, and everyone acknowledges they punched the Magic in the mouth. They struggled to get up. They struggled to just kind of find their rhythm and break that defense down. And, Indiana did a lot of similar things. They didn't execute it nearly as well as New York did on Friday night. But again, I think the Magic acknowledge this is how teams are going to play them. They're going to dare them to shoot. They're going to force them to one side. They're going to kind of keep the passing out. They're going to load up the paint to prevent Paolo, Banchero, Franz Wagner from getting to the basket. Orlando's going to have to find a way to create some space. And frankly, just not having a true point guard out there, not even having Jalen Suggs out there who can kind of organize the team a little bit, that really hurt the team. And I don't think the Magic will admit it, but it's just so abundantly clear that the Magic need an actual point guard on the floor. Gary Harris did his best to bring the ball up. Paolo Banchero brought the ball up. Franz Wagner brought the ball up. You're fine initiating actions with those guys, but organizing is a completely different thing, is a completely different picture for them. And they just weren't good. Like, plain and simple, they just weren't good at it. There's just a lot of possessions where the Magic went through their first action. It didn't work. They pulled it back out. Now you have 3 guys on the strong side of the floor where the ball is, and you have to kind of reorganize, and you don't have the space. And again, you have 3 guys on the strong side of the ball. that naturally brings a lot of bodies right there. Our friend Frazan Omer noted that, the problem isn't that the Magic aren't running sets. It's that they don't have a secondary action when the first set gets blown up. And look, Indiana, I thought, did a very good job putting a lot of ball pressure. They made getting through screens hard. They made that initial kind of, like the Magic run a lot of plays where they pass it to the wing, they come around, or they pass it to someone at the top of the key. They come around for dribble handoff. If that's denied, they swing back to the other side. They did a good job blowing up that initial action. And there were just a lot of periods where the Magic just kind of looked confused by it, for lack of a better way to phrase it. Just looked like, okay, what do I do next? Because this first option's been taken away. Now the second option's coming and we're running out of time. And so the Magic their pace has slowed, at least by possessions per 48 minutes, has slowed significantly over the last 2 months. And that's honestly fine. The Magic like to play a more defensive game. They like to kind of work the shot clock down a little bit. That suits them. I don't necessarily hate that their possession count is low, but they do got to pick up their pace. They do got to play a little bit faster. They're initiating actions too late. So by the time they get to that second action, they're running out of time on the shot clock. And that forces, Paolo Banchero to have to go one-on-one, or a hot potato pass to Franz Wagner in the corner, which happened a few times. It's about getting more efficient shots and just getting into the offense more efficiently. Again, like your two best players, Paolo Banchero, 6 for 20, 1 for 8 from 3. The fact he's taking 8 threes is a problem. That means he's settling on the outside. 6 for 8 from the foul line, 5 rebounds for him, 5 assists as well, 3 turnovers, 19 points. Like he was really struggling to just get downhill. And look, he was able to force his way downhill. He's able to force his way to those baskets, but they need someone that's going to give him the ball in his spots. And sometimes that means he shouldn't be the one creating. And he's having to create so much right now. He needs someone to help relieve him a little bit. And, Jalen Suggs' shooting would help, even though he's still kind of played like he's a non-shooter. That shooting helps a lot. No one's scared of Caleb Houston. I hate to say it. Caleb Houston started in this game. He's 0 for 2, 0 for 1 from deep in 22 minutes. No one's scared of him. And that's fine. Like, I think I've said this a million times. When Caleb Houston is shooting threes, he is such a big boost to this team. When he is not shooting threes, when he's not making threes, I think he fights and plays hard defensively, but he's not giving you much on the floor if he's not hitting threes. And even in this game, like usually he's shooting 2 for 8 on threes. Like he will be a volume 3-point shooter. The Magic couldn't even get him shots in this game. Orlando ends up with 18 assists on 33 field goal makes. They really struggled to move the ball. They shoot 37.5% for the game. Franz Wagner, same deal, 5 for 14, 13 points, 0 for 3 from beyond the arc, 3 for 5 from the foul line, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, just not able to get moving. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here. The Magic could not get themselves moving, and that's what killed them. That's what hurt them throughout the course of this game. They just could not get moving downhill, could not get things moving in the right direction for them. Wendell Carter, I thought, played a really, really hard game. 13 points, 5 for 13 shooting, 0 for 5 from 3, so that makes him 5 for 8 from inside the arc. 3 for 3 from the foul line, 15 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds. Early in the game, when the Magic did build their 15-point lead in the second quarter, a good chunk of it, especially early in the first quarter, was built on Wendell Carter just outworking guys to the offensive glass. He was, I think he was rightfully knocked after the game on Friday for not being as assertive on the glass and then getting outworked on the glass. That did not happen in this game. He outworked Miles Turner on that glass all night long. And early in the game, again, that gave the Magic some energy. That energy dropped very, very quickly. And the Magic could not really find it again. Orlando is starting backcourt. Gary Harris, like I said, Caleb Houston didn't score. Gary Harris, 5 points, 2 for 3 shooting. Again, just not able to get these guys involved. Like the fact that Gary Harris only had 3 shots, and I know like Gary Harris isn't a heavy shooter, but Gary Harris getting shots is a product of the ball moving because he's not creating for himself. So if the ball is moving, that means it's rotating inside out around the perimeter to a Gary Harris shot. There's a reason why the Magic have a great record when Gary Harris makes 2 threes, because he's not shooting a ton of shots. He's not shooting a ton of threes. But him getting shots, him getting those opportunities is usually a sign the Magic's offense is moving and working. And look, it was hard to find bright spots elsewhere on the roster. Joe Ingles had 11 points, 4 for 5 shooting, 3 for 4 from deep, hit a couple of those threes in the second quarter when the Magic built their lead. Joe Ingles did a good job. I thought Joe Ingles was really good. Help move the ball. Like, he's a passer first and foremost, as much as he's a shooter. He's got to help move the ball and get guys in the right direction. Cole Anthony ended up with 16 points, got to line for 8 free throws, was 7 for 8, only 4 for 14. Just, missed some shots in the lane that were short. He got good looks. I really like Cole Anthony's looks. He took maybe a few bad shots in the third quarter when everyone was trying to force things. And that third quarter was the decisive one, 39-21 in Indiana's favor. That's when the game finally just completely flipped over. And we know Indiana's a good third quarter team. So when the Magic went to the locker room only up by 3, that was a problem. But Cole was off. I like the aggression though, but I like the aggression again. Everyone was trying to do the right thing, but just not enough ball movement. Just a lot of him forcing his way into the lane, trying to create shots, and that's kind of what his role is. So I'm not going to fault him too much for that. But just unable to get going, like no one was. Mo Wagner with 9 points, Jonathan Isaac with 9 points on 3 for 4 from deep, couple blocks for him. Just a really rough game. And again, Indiana did not kill the Magic offensively like they do with a lot of other teams. Orlando still defended Indiana very tough. 20 points for Tyrese Halliburton, 20 points for Pascal Siakam. Both were inefficient. 6 for 14 for Siakam, 6 for 15 for Halliburton. He was 1 for 6 from 3. But at the end of the day, this game came down to the Magic. They turned the ball over 13 times for 21 points, just killed them there. They had 8 turnovers at halftime. They gave up 54 points in the paint, a lot of fouls. Indiana's not a team that goes to the foul line. They shot 33 free throws, made 27. And then the killer, 27 fast break points. Orlando failed to score in transition. And again, Orlando just late, slapping down, swiping. We can argue about the officials. And look, a big part of why Indiana came back, they had 15 free throws, I believe, in the second quarter. They got to the foul line. That calmed them down. The Magic got to the foul line, and it didn't calm them down, but they were frustrated with the officiating all night long. And, we could certainly argue about the level of some of the calls that the Magic were getting, that they were being called for, that they weren't getting on their end. But look, they were fouls. Like, by definition, they were fouls. Whether they were being called on the Pacers as well is another question. But Orlando was bad. Orlando by the numbers was good defensively. They were bad. Like, they allowed frustration seep into their defense, seep into their offense, and that's ultimately why they lost this game. The Orlando Magic fall to the Indiana Pacers 111-97. So the Magic have laid an egg now in 2 marquee playoff matchups for them, at least. What needs to change as we get ready for the playoffs? We'll talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats right now and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways, though, to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making it even easier to find exactly who you're looking for. 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, and you should too. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So the Magic have a loss. They're going to lose. They weren't going to go undefeated the rest of the season. They're going to take some losses here. And it's always about how you respond. And so I liked how the Magic played in the first quarter. I thought their defense did really, really well. Turnovers were the big culprit in the first quarter, but I really liked how, holding Indiana to 18.25 is a huge victory. And, I think we'll talk a little bit about this tomorrow, but I would still feel really comfortable playing Indiana in a play-in game situation. Again, not that the Pacers are a sure win, but that's a team the Magic match up really well against. And even with this game, you could kind of see how the Magic could match up with Indiana and do really well against them. Not having Jalen Suggs was a big factor in this game. But look, we just faced two real opponents. The Magic just faced two real opponents. No offense to the teams that the Magic faced. We know where y'all are at in the standings. Orlando took care of their business. In a lot of ways, these two games had to be a wake-up call. Have to be a wake-up call to say, we're not good enough yet. Like, seriously, let's just say it. The Magic are not good enough yet to play at this level. Certainly, they got away with a lot against Washington, and that should have been a warning sign. They got away against Utah. They got away with a lot against Charlotte. And we could see all these warning signs, and we talked about playing to the standard. And yeah, it's better to learn these lessons while winning, but New York and Indiana just put the Magic in their place. So what has to change? What has to change between now and April? Magic are not going to see another team that's currently in the postseason picture until they play New Orleans next Thursday, 1 week from Thursday. And that'll be part of the Magic's 8-game homestand. So the Magic are about to get some the schedule is very, very favorable for them. Everyone around the league knows it. I was talking to my buddy Tony East from Locked On Pacers, who was at the game. And he was just like, I was looking at the Magic schedules, like, oh my God, like that, it's really set up for them. I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, we've been saying this since August. The Magic have opportunity. The Magic are not out of the race for the 4 seed. That's the point I'm getting across. Just because they lost these two games does not mean they're out. But like I said, I think on Friday's episode, split these two games. It's like, okay, this is 6 seed. This is a real playoff team. We're good. This is more about a vibe check. Win both is like the 4 seed's very real. Lose both, and we got to start wondering if this team are frauds, for lack of a better way to phrase it. Look, I think a lot of what we're seeing is about maturity and just a young team getting punched a little bit, getting pushed, getting tested. And it's a test that this group has never had to pass. And not having Jalen Suggs for both of these games, because if there's one player that if you punch in the mouth, he's going to punch right back, it's Jalen Suggs. And he sets the tone for this whole team. He gets everyone, Jalen Suggs talks a lot about his ability to center himself and find peace and find poise. And he can be erratic at times with the ball. So I'm not going to say he's perfect at this. Jalen Suggs is the heartbeat of this team. And so not having him for these two humongous games, that hurt in immeasurable ways. I don't know if the Magic would have won both of these games, either of these games, if Suggs did play, but it definitely didn't help. Having said that, what has to change for the playoffs? What do the Magic need to learn and work on over the next week till they face New Orleans? But really over the next month as they look ahead to the playoffs, because at the end of the day, that's what we're focused on. And to me, it's really about the simple things. Again, it's really about the simplest thing. My hair is just all over the place if you're watching on YouTube. It's really about doing the simple things better. It's about knowing who you are and sticking to them. It's about those basic principles. What is Orlando Magic basketball? Like that's what you have to ask, because when you face adversity, when you face challenges like this, that's not when you leave your character. That's when you double down on it. That's when you figure out who you really are and stick to what that identity is. What the Magic didn't do these last two games, what the Magic did really well against Washington when they faced adversity, but didn't do well in these last two games, is when New York punched him in the mouth. They went to ISO ball. They went to hero ball. They didn't move the ball. They got worse. They made the problem worse. But if the Magic stuck to, hey, we're going to share the ball, we're going to move it, we're going to, be patient, we're going to be methodical. Not saying they would have figured it out, but they would have played a lot better. If defensively, it's about protecting the paint. It's about tightening up that grip defensively. And again, The failure in this game was not that Orlando couldn't score, because Orlando can win games scoring 97 points. They're good enough defensively to do that. The problem was Indiana was able to get downhill. Indiana was able to live in the paint. Indiana was able to beat them consistently in transition. There was a lack of discipline on the defensive end, because at the end of the day, the key to Orlando's offense is their defense builds their offense. How does Orlando create the mismatches to use their size? They get a stop, they get out in transition, they force you to match up, and then they hit you with a secondary break. It's not about fast break points necessarily. It's about creating those matchups and creating that rhythm and flow. Because the Magic were fouling so much, their defense didn't have a rhythm and didn't create a rhythm for offense. The offense consistently had to go up against a set defense because they were fouling every time down the court at a certain point in that second quarter. And that just killed their rhythm. When you look at the fourth quarter when the Magic didn't make a little bit of a push to cut into the 15-point deficit, it's because their defense was flying around. You could feel the energy when their defense was going. And look, there was a point where Orlando was down by like 9 or 10 points, and they had an open three, and they missed it. They missed some critical shots that I think could have made this a game. But the energy has to start with their defense. And that's the thing, these last two games at least, and it hasn't been the case throughout the year, but the last two games, when the Magic got frustrated with their inability to score, when the Magic got frustrated with their turnovers, got frustrated with the officials and the physicality of the game, and Orlando likes to play physical, but teams have been pushing back a little bit now. When they faced all this, their defense gave way. They didn't commit. They didn't double down on their defense. They didn't commit to what Magic basketball is. We know what this team's identity is. We know what this team likes to do. And when you're facing this adversity, that's what you got to do really well. You got to focus on that one thing you do really well. This team is a defensive team. They want to shut you down defensively, shut down the paint, make life hard, create some turnovers. And you only had 13 turnovers in this game for 10 points. Orlando failed to execute on a lot of things in this game. This game was probably closer than 13 points, but 13 points was exactly what it needed to be. Because Orlando did not take advantage of the opportunities they did get, and they didn't create enough of the opportunities that they rely on to win. What has to change for the playoffs is you have to know who you are. This team knows who they are. But when tested, when pushed, when shoved, when dealt with the physical blows of this game, the Magic again didn't step up. They did not embrace their identity in a lot of ways. They allowed themselves to get frustrated. They allowed Indiana to dictate a lot of the terms of this game. And that's ultimately what cost them. This big win, this big game, cost them in New York as well. And they got to find it again. They got a week now to find it. They got a week now to prep themselves to try and get right. Again, Brooklyn just beat Cleveland on the road, I believe. That's their last game before they come to Orlando too. So they're playing a Brooklyn team that is coming off a really nice win. I know they just lost to Charlotte, but they're coming off a really nice win. Then they get Toronto, and Toronto's without Scotty Barnes. They can be tough. Then they get Charlotte again, and then New Orleans, and then they're the 8-game homestand. They got to use those games, and they got to use this time now where they're going to be home a lot to sharpen the steel, to sharpen their defense up, to make their defense that dominant force again. And they have to understand that it is not easy, that it's going to take constant work, constant effort, constant focus, constant attention to detail, because that's what it's going to take in the playoffs. The Magic lost those details. They lost all of that the last two games. And again, more than the result, that's what's disappointing. That's why this weekend disappointed, because the Magic didn't play Magic basketball all weekend long in these two critical games. When they got put under pressure, they folded. And that's probably harsh. That's not quite accurate. When they got put under pressure, they shriveled. They backed up. They got put on their back foot. They got sped up. And that's what's got to change. They got to learn. They got to understand that. And they got to get a whole lot better. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them the podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And be sure as well to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. You can find that at patreon.com/OrlandoMagicHub for more articles, more content as well. And direct access to me. And of course, I thank you all for your support. Don't forget to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel. You can find that on YouTube as well as on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.